So good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for the Pricing and Valuation Workshop with Mona Sarghie from Head Start Business Solutions Consulting. As you saw in the emails, the workshop will be 2 hours long and you will receive at the end a live case. As attendees, you are all eligible for a free 30-minute one-on-one session with Mona and the opportunity to get up to 3 direct references. And Mona will be going over all the details for that in her introduction. We want this to be a very interactive workshop, and we strongly appreciate and encourage your vocal participation. Now, so Mona has a few more house rules that she will go over.
There's like 3 people. That's like.
Wait, is this from Cool?
No, this is from.
Also, a friendly reminder: turn off your microphone.
Any people right now?
I can't actually tell who that is.
Yeah, so if just everyone please make sure that you have your microphones muted and your videos on. And Mona will start with her introduction and get this show running.
In just a sec. This may be something that reoccurs throughout the next couple hours. Just to confirm, you can all see the PowerPoint slide. Yes. Few nodding heads. Perfect. All right, so good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here to share this pocket of time with you as I do what I can to share some of my knowledge and experience that I hope will add value to you as you look to gain insight into the many different aspects of pricing, as well as the possibility of launching your own careers forward in the consulting world. To get us started and to give me the opportunity to motivate your desire to pay attention for the evening, I would like to start off by mentioning how important pricing is, regardless of your future career path. Having this baseline understanding of pricing, as well as how clients or potential employers will perceive your own value, is absolutely essential. So essentially, what having this understanding of pricing will allow you to do is to really develop and establish a working relationship with your client. Having a confidence when you go into these meetings will also help really get that value across to them. Dr. Rainer Meckes, a strategy and marketing consultant based out of Germany, wisely wrote that intelligently managing price structures and levels is the most important topic to secure business success, regardless of industry or what business aspirations you have or are going into. And please don't mind, my cat is literally likely going to be beside me for the duration of this workshop. With pricing, you have the opportunity that when you get it right, you will thrive. If you get this wrong, you risk permanent damage to your business or your client's business, which would result in a damage to your reputation. So I ask you to think of this workshop as an opportunity to invest in your future success. So to help me help you invest in your future success, I ask for the investment of your time and attention. This evening's workshop, in its most basic overview, is divided into the following segments. I'm going to begin by a few reading recommendations from notable pricing experts whose published works can absolutely benefit you regardless of your chosen career paths. I will go on to briefly summarize a little bit about myself as well as my organization before we take a look at what consultants do and what the options are for you when you're considering the consulting world. I'll also very briefly touch on some more popular financial modeling that's used by many forms of consultants before overviewing the more commonly used pricing strategies, as well as product and service pricing. From there, we're going to look at how to think about how to price yourself. So hopefully you can feel a little bit more prepared and confident when you're talking to future clients or speaking with future employers. There is an art to it. And at least in my own experiences, there's a stigma surrounding your own confidence behind knowing what your time and your work scope is worth to a client. As I believe many of you have already seen in the email strings, towards the end of this workshop, I'm going to review an opportunity for you to have one of my clients and share your knowledge as it pertains to your consulting expertise in a way that will allow you to get up to 3 references, one from myself and one from each of those clients. I will review this in much more detail, and the case study will also be provided to you in the email follow-up. So don't worry if not everything's covered. I will be here at a later time to support you in the form of any questions. There is going to be a lot to cover this evening, and although I plan to keep things engaging and moving along, if you do have any questions, my email along with the case study will be sent hopefully within a few hours after this workshop. Now, I am navigating the PowerPoint and looking at my point form notes. So although we have set times for discussions throughout the evening, if you have any questions outside of those times, please know I'm not actually able to access the chat box. So I'd instead ask you to raise your hand. So either I can ask you to speak or Jennifer hopefully will be able to assist me with that. Should there be any tech issues or multitasking difficulties, I will be relying on you, Jennifer, just to help me make sure I am not missing anyone.
That's what I'm here for.
Perfect. I'd also like to encourage you to actually think about if you're agreeing with everything I'm saying. I always welcome feedback and your opinions and thoughts at any time, even if they don't marry my own. I absolutely believe that solutions come from empowering everyone, and that includes differences of opinion. Finally, please leave yourself muted unless you would like to interject, which of course I would always welcome, or when called upon, and ensure that your names are changed to however you would like me to address you. And yeah, if you could leave your videos on, at least for some of the workshop, that would be amazing. It would really help me think I'm not having a lengthy one-sided conversation with my cat. So without any further ado, let's get started. Famous pricing strategists. Herman Simon is the brilliant author of the highly recommended Confessions of a Pricing Man. This pricing powerhouse is a strategy, marketing, and pricing consultant based out of Germany. He's widely regarded as an influencer in the management thinking arena. This is probably my favorite book on pricing, and if you were to read anything that I'm about to recommend, this would be it. I do use some of the examples he mentions throughout his book in this workshop, as the way he tells the story, I feel really gets the point across, but also manages to keep things interesting and engaging. The book focuses not only on value, but on the importance of pricing strategies that align our target markets with their perceived value of whatever it is we're trying to get them to buy into. Next, there's Dr. Marcus Huesman-Kopetsky. This individual is the reason why I've included the proper spelling of names of all the authors and book recommendations on this slide. Aside from that, his book, The Psychology of Pricing, is phenomenal. It takes a deep dive into looking at our customer or consumer's viewpoint surrounding the psychology of pricing and what we can do to really get that buy-in from our clients. It is a phenomenal resource as it blends academic studies with really useful and fascinating data that is applicable for managers and business owners across industries. Thirdly, we have Ernst Jan Bauder's Pricing, the Third Business Skill, Principles of Price Management. Aside from publishing, his professional accomplishments include being a noted speaker at the European Pricing Summit. Yes, there is actually a thing as the European Pricing Summit. Something I was very surprised to learn. Something to think about during our first discussion section is there are so many different models, but really, in order to give the proper, appropriate value to your clients, especially if you are looking at being a consultant, is how can you blend these different models together? What are the things you can take from each of the readings you do and from each of the resources you find to really customize something that's specialized to their needs? Lastly, we have Rafi Mohammed. He's the founder of Culture of Profit, a Cambridge, Massachusetts-based company that consults with businesses to help develop and improve their pricing strategies. His book, The 1% Windfall: How Successful Companies Use Price to Profit and Grow, centers on discussions about how modest incremental changes to pricing can yield significant financial benefits for businesses and organizations. A little bit about myself and my organization. I have a bachelor's in entrepreneurial management, which is where I started my after high school learning experience. The knowledge I gained from the undergrad certification led me to living abroad. I started my consulting work actually in the UK, working for a massive startup corporation doing due diligence research-based consulting. Eventually, the call to come home was made. My father founded his own helicopter repair and overhaul company in 1974, and he needed to restructure his organization in order to find someone to take it over. The takeover was complicated and lengthy. There were a lot of moving parts, a lot of disgruntled employees, and a lot of issues insofar as to getting the company as a whole organized. It afforded me, now looking back, a ton of valuable insight into the world of mergers, acquisitions, and overall operational efficiency initiatives, as well as setbacks. It was during this time that I completed my master's in interdisciplinary studies. This in turn is what afforded me the opportunity to delve deeper into accounting, economics, finance, and to really see how different industries could be used to, or an understanding of different industries could be used to really add value to the projects I was taking on. I had a planned amicable departure from this firm just as COVID-19 stopped everyone's plans. As bigger picture problem solving, researching, and pattern hunting across disciplines was always something I enjoyed, I finally managed to incorporate my firm, and I formally launched the business website last year. During this time, I also completed my business consulting diploma, as well as I have a business analytics certification from Harvard University, just to help me get my ducks in a row, and as well, always learn to always add more value to those clients. My organization's business model is perhaps a little bit unique. What we do is we include the skill sets of multiple independent experts in order to add their own realm of experience to projects. And by giving them the choice of what projects they work on, they feel empowered and actually wind up working a lot harder for the clients, which in turn makes the clients happy and come back. You can think of Head Start Business Solutions Consulting as a client external support matchmaking service, if you will, all under the umbrella of my own management, so I can put my many years of schooling and experience to good use, while obviously outsourcing my weaknesses to professionals who are better able to add that value to those clients. Very briefly, my organization offers the following. We specialize in operational efficiency consulting, startup preparation and support, and industry and investment due diligence consulting. On the coaching side, there's executive, corporate, and life purpose coaching with speaking engagements, workshops, individual and group sessions throughout the entire coaching arena of services that's offered. If you did want any more details, feel free to review the website, and I'm always happy to answer any email questions you may have. And for those of you who do want to take advantage of the 30-minute free consultation that's offered for you being on this live workshop, that's a time for you to address anything you'd like to know about. That brings us to what consultants actually do. It depends. It depends on what kind of consultant would best suit your interests and your strengths and the skill sets that you want to develop, which I will elaborate on shortly. Overall, consultants are educated, constructive thinkers. Those I see as being really well suited for the broad categorization that is consulting are people who are organized, self-motivated, and purpose-driven problem solvers. My Google search led me to the definition of consulting as the business of giving expert advice to other professionals. Although most consultants wind up working for large corporations, you do have many wildcards like me who found a way to make a different kind of business model work. The Institute of Management Consultants in the US has a page on consulting humor that at least initially gives a really good explanation about what consultants do extremely well. It goes something like this. A consultant is someone who is brought in to find out what has gone wrong by the people who made it go wrong, in the comfortable expectation that he will not bite the hand that feeds him by placing the blame where it belongs. In real life, there is no assignment of blame in the solution generation for our clients. Rather, to do the job really well, extraordinarily well, there is something to be said about the development of trust in creating a safe space to foster lasting, positive organizational change. Does that include accountability initiatives? Yes, absolutely. I believe that the leaders of any organization cannot innovate or inspire those who work for them or with them by not also holding themselves accountable to the same standards they set for those that are in their organization as a whole. This brings us to the first bit of the many career options that you could take if you go down the consulting path. Management consultants. Under this umbrella, I'll start off by discussing strategy consulting. Strategy consultants look at a top-down view of a business. It's where the most fundamental directional choices are made that affect every aspect. Strategy consultants look at a company's long-term vision and the strategic plan for getting there. The what is happening right now that will impact the long-term goal of the company. Strategy consultants also look at resource allocation. What is being used with the time, money, and energy of the people in the organization, and is it being used effectively? They'll also look at whether or not a company should drop certain departments within their own organizations, or if they should rather retain the current portfolio, having determined that these loss leaders are in actual fact an important part of the company's overall financial plan and vision. Then we have operations consulting. Operations consulting deal with process management, they deal with procurement, outsourcing, supply chain management. Operations consulting essentially is about understanding the opportunity cost of every important business decision. From here, we have financial advisory accounting. This is an enormous market. It's absolutely massive. In its most basic form, it includes corporate finance, it includes transaction services, restructuring of organizations, as well as risk management. If you extend the umbrella a little further, it could also include merger and acquisitions, as well as the strategies behind merger and acquisitions themselves in the form of company valuation and due diligence consulting. So the research that proves why the decisions are the best ones to make and provides the client with all of the avenues for how to move things forward the way they want. Then there's compliance consulting. Compliance consulting is all about protecting an organization from risk. It may be very well suited to any hypochondriacs that are in this group. You plan for the worst, you assume the worst, you prepare for the worst, and by doing so, you're actually ensuring successful change initiatives. Compliance consulting also deals with applicable regulations and ethical standards. It's about minimizing a company's exposure to said risk by answering all the what if questions or all of the if this then that questions. Compliance consultants also ask things like, how can we improve this compliance program and integrate it into the company to mitigate said risk of non-compliance, whatever the non-compliance may be? There is a large legal knowledge base or understanding that is required if you're looking at going into this type of career. You have to have a broad knowledge of legal regulations as well as regulations that pertain to the specific industry that you are looking to get into. That brings us to human resource consultants. Businesses need a clear and effective process in place to manage the people. In this case, the people within the organization. Human resource consultants deal with everything from training and development of employees to employee engagement and satisfaction, conflict resolution, employee benefits and pensions, talent mobility. There's also a segment here for the hiring and firing. If someone doesn't want to take it on themselves, they can hire a human resource consultant to do that more effectively. The human resource consulting industry emerged from general management consulting in order to help companies address these more specific tasks and decisions. So, common questions for the human resource consulting side of things would be, are a company's policies and procedures in line with the regulations as it pertains to the people in the organization? How could we best implement HR policies and procedures in a way that would improve overall employee satisfaction and buy-in? Is there anything missing by way of training programs or ongoing support for these clients? Is there anything else that can be done to improve employee satisfaction and their effectiveness to the organization as a whole? On to corporate consulting careers. You have IT and software consulting. Information technology is a massive part of every single business, perhaps now more so than ever. IT consulting looks at things like systems integration, enterprise architecture, software management, and data analytics. It is essential and relevant for every business of every size across every industry. Common questions for these kind of consultants include, how can we use new technology to help us reach our strategic goals? Is there anything that exists currently or is up and coming that we can use to optimize the existing IT setup? Or does it need to be replaced by something completely different? It is crucial that companies successfully implement the software and optimize their workflows around software so that it makes things more efficient and effective and not less so. Types of large software programs are often focused on increasing efficiency of the following business processes: customer relationship management, enterprise resource planning, content management, supply chain management, human resource management. Virtually everything about an organization can be put into some sort of IT software system to make things easier, assuming, of course, that there is the proper training in place to carry it on. Next up, business consulting, very generally speaking. Organizations may hire a business consultant if they need someone who looks at the business objectively to identify problems and provide solutions. Essentially, a SWOT analysis from someone who does not have any stake or any pre-existing bias to what's really going on. Someone who can remain neutral and objective to handle controversial issues, or perhaps just some extra horsepower to supplement any gaps in current staffing. Business consultants ask questions like, what are the opportunities that are arising in this industry? The SWOT analysis, as mentioned earlier. How can we reallocate resources to improve efficiency or the actual effectiveness of the policies and procedures themselves? Should this business focus on acquiring more customers, or should they be retaining the customers they have for repeat purchases? Next, we have environmental consulting. Environmental laws and regulations apply to most industries, everything from construction to waste management, energy development, city planning. Before starting any project, companies in these industries specifically, and many others, often look towards environmental consultants to analyze the effects of their proposed plans and submit their findings to local government. Environmental consultants ask questions surrounding a company's business activity as it may impact the environment. If the processes that are currently in place are actually in compliance with laws and regulations that they need to be, and how, if it's possible, can the company reduce any negative impact to the environment? If someone here wanted to look at becoming an independent environmental consultant, it's important to know that the success of this particular branch really does rely heavily on someone's ability to get proposals to be accepted by biologists, as well as get the buy-in of corporations. That is an enormously delicate balancing act. Last up, under the corporate consulting umbrella, sales consulting. Sales is widely considered the most important part of any business, and every business on the planet wants to improve their sales and their sales team's performance. The role of a sales consultant is typically focused on training salespeople, but they can also be hired to advise on how to manage the existing sales team more effectively. Resource allocation of the team at hand, if you will. They look at improving sales processes, sales strategies, incentivizing sales teams, and managing sales teams effectively overall. Now, independent consulting careers. We'll start off with talking about marketing consultants. All businesses, very generally speaking, need to attract, convert, and retain new clients. Everything from pay-per-click advertising, content marketing, search engine optimization, direct response marketing, print, TV, radio, it's all encompassed in the marketing. And of course, social media, which I'll discuss in a moment. Choosing the right marketing channels to pursue is very challenging across the board for a lot of business owners. There are a lot of options, and if they choose wrong, they could end up doing much more harm than good. Marketing channels and the technology that powers them are also always evolving, which further complicates things. This is why many businesses look towards marketing consultant experts to help them plan, improve, evolve, or even completely run their marketing campaigns. These types of consultants would ask things like, what marketing channels should I pursue? Or how can we improve conversions to reduce our customer acquisition costs? Something that can add up very quickly over a short period of time. Online marketing is actually one of the few fields of consulting where degrees and certifications don't necessarily mean that much. On the social media side, it would be all about how you use social media, and everything revolves around the results you get from using social media effectively. Social media consultants specifically, and there are a lot of experts in this field and this specialization, ask things like, what is the appropriate use of social media channels as it pertains to finding the right target markets? What is the appropriate content for businesses to be putting out on social media? And what is the appropriate frequency of said content? These consultants will work with businesses not only to define their target social audience, but also to help them find the best strategies to reach them. Financial consultants. Everyone has to make financial decisions. Managing finances for things like product development, hiring new employees, and having benefit programs is often very demanding, and it gives an opportunity for financial consultants or financial advisors to add enormous value to businesses. Independent financial consultants ask things like, how can this individual use RRSPs and so forth to best manage their money in a way that aligns them with a long-term financial plan? Or how can we improve this organization's cash flow to enable a more stable business growth? They'll also ask which investment opportunities would best suit the current situation: stocks, bonds, real estate, and so on. This all falls under the umbrella of financial consultants. Financial consultants will also often work closely with other professional advisors, such as accountants, insurance brokers, and attorneys. Next up, image consulting and brand consulting. These types of consultants all focus on improving the way others perceive their client. Everything from clothing style to communication forms is all reviewed under this umbrella. Image consultants also look at things like body language and business etiquette to see how potential clients in target markets are perceiving the individual or the organization as a whole. It's about how you talk, how people perceive you when you are talking. That can be incredibly important. For consultants in this area, finding clients is usually a little bit more about the law of attraction. Credentials or training doesn't necessarily influence someone's desire to hire you. Clients will typically actually be attracted to the online image presented by this type of consultant and will want to emulate them in some way. They'll hire them based on this attraction or their look or their perception of success based on what this consultant is portraying. Lastly, career coaching and consulting. Career coaches and consultants ask things like, what career path is right for this individual? Or how can we best position this individual to increase their chances of promotion or get them on the professional path that they want to be? What skills does this individual need to develop in order to achieve their career goals? Career coaches and consultants do tend to help individuals, specifically those in the initial stages of their career journeys. Their job is to understand the client and to help them find a good career fit. They will likely also have some form of background in human resources or headhunting. And career consultants also tend to have an advanced expertise in a specific industry. Any questions so far? I'll give it a minute before Alan, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Mona. Can you speak a little bit more to the piece about writing proposals that need to get accepted by biologists and government with respect to the environmental consultant?
Yes, so for an environmental consultant, it would depend on the industry, but for an environmental consultant, let's say in the oil field. If a company is looking to expand in that area, and whatever it is that the business processes are that would have a negative impact on the environment surrounding the area, buy-in from stakeholders like well-known biologists would actually help them get credentials from both sides and have them be, how do I put this? They would be a mediator between environmentalists and corporations. And the environmentalists also would rely heavily on advice being given by marine biologists, or depending on what area it would be, the forestry and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions before we move on? All right. So, financial modeling for consultants. Many branches of the consulting world, as I mentioned earlier, utilize the listed models in order to problem solve, strategize, and gather effective data or quantitative information for their clients. I will just briefly touch on each of these, but as I mentioned, you can always reach out an email form. I have a ton of resources should this be something you want to dive into further. Our standard 3-statement model. It is the most basic setup, the baseline foundation for every other model, and it really gives a good grasp of the company's financial health. It's the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. It's important not only to know each of these statements and how to work them, but how to link the three together, which then leads us to the other models. You have the discounted cash flow model. So this builds on the 3-statement model to value a company based on its net present value of the business's future cash flow. The discounted cash flow model takes the cash flows from the 3-statement model, makes some adjustments, and discounts these figures to present value at the company's weighted average cost of capital. These first two types of models are used by consultants researching a firm's equity. Next, we have the merger model. This model is a little bit more advanced, and it's used to analyze the financial state of an organization. It's most commonly used in investment banking and/or corporate development. And as I said, if you want some examples, I'm happy to email those over. Then we have the initial public offering model. Investment bankers and corporate development professionals use the initial public offering model to evaluate a business prior to it going public. It helps prepare stakeholders for making educated assumptions and decisions about how much investors would be willing to pay for the company or portions thereof in the form of stocks. Then we have the leveraged buyout model. It's an advanced form of financial modeling, and it's probably the most challenging of all the types of financial models to navigate. It's not very common outside of the private equity and investment banking world. And so I won't really elaborate on it too much further at this stage, but if this is where your interests lie, I highly recommend getting a good grasp on how to use this model, as it can add enormous value to your clients. Then we have the sum of the parts model. What we do here is this type of model is built by taking several discounted cash flow models of different parts of the company and adds them together to sum things up. So the value of business unit A, business unit B, and investment C minus liabilities D arrive at our net asset value for the company. Then we have the consolidation model. This type of model includes multiple business units added into one single one. It's similar to the sum of the parts model, where Division A and Division B are added together into just one consolidated worksheet. The budget model. This is used to model finance for professionals in financial planning and analysis to get the budget together for the coming years. Budget models are typically designed to be based on monthly or quarterly figures and focus heavily on the income statement to get a clear understanding of where the business is. Our forecasting model is used also in financial planning and analysis. It looks to effectively build a forecast that will then be compared to the budget model. Lastly, we have the option pricing model. The two main types of option pricing models are the binomial tree and Black-Scholes. The binomial tree mathematical equation centers around price over time. The Black-Scholes equation provides financial insight in how to hedge the options by buying and selling an underlying asset using the tangible asset of cash in just the right way in order to help companies minimize risk. Is there any questions for these models?
Which ones, if I may, which ones are you using? Which ones have you found to be the most common in your work? Like the 80%, the 20% that has given you 80% of the value?
For my organization, because the bigger picture, or the larger organizations, I should say, it's all about operational efficiency. So what I've actually done is I take a blend of the three statement model as well as budgeting and forecasting, and I actually go down a rabbit hole of an opportunity cost analysis of every decision. And then I forecast numbers aligned with those decisions to say, if you do this based on the information you've provided, this is the financial implication of this. Or if you choose to launch this product instead of this product, these are the numbers associated with that. So from myself personally, that's what I use. I use it actually quite regularly. It's a little bit more standard.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions while I sip my tea? All right. This brings us to the 5 C's of pricing. Scale Finance wrote a very clear, phenomenal piece that summarizes this very well, called The Critical 5 C's of Pricing. Google it, it's a good read. I do use a lot of it here just to briefly explain the following concepts. So we'll start with cost. It's the most obvious component of pricing anything. You cannot set a price if you don't know how much it costs you inside and out. This includes direct costs and overhead costs, so on and so forth. It also means the importance of knowing those cost structures for each item or for the service you sell, not just on a company-wide or entire product line basis. Pricing decisions based on an average cost of goods are not nearly as effective as those that take into consideration the significant variations that exist from each item to each item or service to service within a company. Understanding your sales mix is exceptionally important here. Next, customers. The ultimate judge of whether your price delivers a superior value is the customer. Are your customers willing to pay what you're going to charge? What you'll need to know is, what is your customer's expected range? What are their highest and lowest price points? And where within this threshold does the cost of your products and services lie? Channels of distribution. are middlemen. How are you getting your products to your customers? It's the pathway that connects cost to customers. It impacts your business very significantly because you need to consider how much everything is going to cost to get said good to said customer. Competition. Every company and every product has competition. Even if the products or services are unique, and I really would hope so that at least in a number of cases they are, it's important to think about indirect as well as direct competitors from your customer or your target market's point of view. If you're not sure about how your customers are perceiving your products, ask. Compatibility. Pricing isn't a standalone decision. There are many variables and other factors. Pricing must work with everything else it is that you're trying to achieve. So asking yourself if your pricing approach is compatible with your marketing objectives, with your target markets, with your sales goals, with the image that you want to be portraying for your brand and to your customer. You're going to need to look at the collective whole of what your pricing means, as well as both the short and long-term objectives of your own organization or the organization of your clients. This brings us to an interesting example about a threshold of tolerance or willingness to pay as far as clients are concerned for price. The Starbucks example looks at the importance of what can be achieved with smart pricing initiatives. In one of its very, very many price increases, Starbucks released a statement saying that it was due to rising labor and non-coffee commodity costs. Regardless of the validity of that statement, we can actually learn a lot from the Starbucks approach to pricing as an example of how to improve our profit margins without driving customers away, but barely. For the most part, Starbucks uses value-based pricing to maximize their profits, and they use research and customer analysis to formulate a targeted price and price increases that actually capture the greatest amount that consumers are willing to pay without actually driving them off. It isn't that common to see companies using a value-based pricing approach to effectively uncover the maximum amount a customer base is willing to spend. Starbucks, however, does this very well. And as such, they make massive margins without driving those customers away. Think to yourself if you've ever complained about how much a Starbucks costs as you're standing in line on the way to get your coffee. This brings us to startup pricing models. The first option, give it away for nothing and make money on advertising. A lot of social apps, a lot of things on the web, including Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, they all follow this model. It's very difficult to follow successfully, especially if you're looking at a startup organization. Something to keep in mind is that your target customer here are actually the advertisers, not the people who are buying in. However, the more people buy in, the more money you could make from the advertising. There's a lot of moving parts. Next, you have your free product bundled with paid services. It's very common for open source software where the product is available for a free download, but customers pay to upgrade. There are other companies that use this same model to charge for installation or maintenance or training or customization. This pricing model is essentially a service business that uses free software as its marketing tool to get that buy-in and get that customer loyalty. Then you have the freemium model. There are many software companies like LinkedIn and Dropbox, and yes, Tinder, that offers a free limited functionality version of their product, hoping that eventually some users will pay a premium for advanced features. The trick with this model is to offer just enough value in your free version so you attract and hopefully lock in the regular users. And incrementally, the more value you show in the premium versions, the more your already loyal customers will be drawn to the upgrade. Your cost-based model. Many consumer products sold through common distribution channels are priced at 2 to 5 times the production costs, depending on the industry. If you're selling into existing retail channels, it's a very common pricing strategy. And it's an easy calculation, although it may not be that effective if you're looking to price yourself in a way that makes you fall outside of the norm, either by branding yourself as an economy brand or as a premium brand. Your value model. If you can make a clear case for the value of your product offers to the customer, then you can price in proportion to said value. In some cases, the value could be monetary. In others, the value could be found in a better, longer lasting quality item or savings by the way of time. Or perhaps the value is in terms of health benefits. Portfolio pricing. If you offer a host of products and services, each with a different cost and value to the customer, then you actually have an opportunity to offer a customized solution that maximizes the benefit to the customer at a maximum profit to you if it's done right. This strategy can become very complex very fast. However, in my experience with the breadth and variety of the consulting work I do, bundling various aspects of services into work scope for clients has shown itself to work quite well because it allows a customization of things in accordance with what they need. Tiered or volume pricing. If your product is purchased in different quantities by different types of buyers, you can offer tiered pricing. Think every single shopping mall everywhere, the buy two and get the third one free. Market pricing. In highly competitive and minimally differentiated markets where competitors' prices are visible to all market participants, prices are primarily set by supply and demand. Think Amazon. Then we have feature pricing. If your product or service can be configured to have a base model with a variety of optional upgrades, you can attract interested buyers with a lower price on the bare bones version, and then slowly but surely upsell them on the features. Anyone who has ever purchased a new car knows exactly what this experience is like. However, if you do consider using feature pricing for yourself, upselling is fine, but make sure that you don't upsell too much or your clients will feel ripped off and go elsewhere. Then we have the razor and blade model. This pricing model involves a reusable base component that you sell cheaply, and then a consumable component that must be replaced regularly. Printer and printer ink. Perfect example. So now we go on to the placebo effect of pricing. The classic placebo effect example is something I'm fairly certain most of you have seen multiple times throughout your educational careers. The study is conducted where you have the two medications, One is the actual medication and one is the placebo. Group 1 gets the real medication. The secondary group gets the placebo or sugar pill that does absolutely zero, nothing at all whatsoever. Test after test has proven that many people who receive the placebo believe it works like the medication and might actually feel better as a result. This suggests that if a person believes something will work, it just might. What does this have to do with pricing? The placebo effect of price takes this theory and expands on it. It says if you have two products and one is marked as being a little more expensive, it will actually be perceived as the better product, even if it's identical to the other. According to science, our expectation of something being better influences our brain's perception of quality, even if it's not a better product. There are tests that can show that a placebo can work as long as the consumer believes it will. Across industries, it does not matter if it's wine, food, technology, medication. What makes it work for the buyer is the expectation that it will work. You can actually extrapolate this as well if you think about how you would price yourself as a consultant. By not going in as the standard and pricing yourself a little more, the perception of the quality is something you can prove over time, but it does give you the opportunity for that initial buy-in where if someone asks you what you charge, you can say, well, you're worth it, and then prove it. Essentially, it's all about managing expectations and being able to prove what you're bringing to the table. Which brings us to questions. Questions, thoughts, comments. Rujuta, am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's right. Regarding the placebo pricing, isn't it possible to lead you into a scenario where you get caught in that image? For example, something like Neutrogena, where initially when they launched, they based themselves like as a scientific product, medical-based product, and then got backed into it. Isn't it possible that you could get backed into that corner?
I suppose it would depend on how your customer expectations of the brand has changed over time. And so let's say if I brand myself a certain way and I use this placebo effect of pricing and I go in way over the market standard, right? And then years from now, there's a disconnect between my future clients and my clients now, where they're actually not perceiving the quality as being there. That is now damaging my brand. So it is important to consider with everything that while something that works right now may be the best thing for this moment, but it is very important for business owners and companies as a whole to be adaptable and to listen to that ongoing feedback from customers. And that is something that would really stop that from damaging a brand. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of like maybe also set a threshold that you will, when you reach that threshold, you'll reevaluate whether something is still working for you.
Test the market. Yeah. Don't go all in without doing the research. Or if you're going to use the placebo effect of pricing, then you need to be absolutely certain you can bring it to the table, or that the product brings it to the table, you know?
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah. Amit, I don't know how to say your name properly. I'm so sorry.
That's all right, no worries. I think you kind of answered my question a bit while answering the previous one. So I wanted to know, like, we discussed a few different models of pricing. And So my question was like, what are the things to consider while using any particular model for pricing? Are there any models that work better for certain industries, or is it based on some other criteria that we should pick a model?
So of the pricing of the clients I've had that are pertain to, you know, figuring out how to help them price their products or services, what actually winds up happening is we use a little bit of a blend of different models. So, and that depends on all of their different target markets. If a customer or a client only has one target market and their commodity is standard, but they're entering the marketplace, then they can either choose, and I'll go into other pricing strategies of what this looks like in a bit, but then they can choose to do really a variation of things. They can do cost-based if they have a low budget and want to keep it simple, and then test the market that way. Or if they know they have an exceptional product and they already have a buy-in of that existing clientele, then value-based would be a good option for them to go into. It's not industry specific, it's service or product specific as it pertains to the client's goals, as well as sort of their long-term objectives and their target market and how people perceive their brand. It looks very different for an existing organization than it would for a startup because they have to get that loyal customer base going.
All right, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, yes.
Yeah, okay. Anything else for the time being, folks? This brings us to product pricing. Very, very briefly, we've got your cost plus pricing. So you add your costs, you add a markup. It's very basic. It can work well in some situations, not necessarily if you're trying to really differentiate yourself from your competition or from what's offered on the mainstream. And I will get into this a little bit more later. Then you have your competitive pricing. You set a price based on what your competition charges. Research-wise, this can be extensive because you need to also be considering your indirect competitors. It's not just what this direct competitor offers that is the same as what I offer, it's what are all of the products and services that exist that would prevent someone from buying my thing instead. Again, value-based pricing. So setting a price based on how much the customer believes what you're selling is worth. I mention this again because it is actually quite important to note that in order to know what your customer thinks a product is worth, you have to have a really solid foundation of customers to draw from to ask them those questions to conduct research. So for a startup organization, this would be something very difficult to pull off without extensive market testing and trial and error on the back end before the organization launches. Then you have price skimming. You set the high price and you lower it as the market evolves. This is very useful for new markets if you could think of any marketplaces that don't already exist, but ones that have few competitors. Then you have penetration pricing. So you set a lower price just above the competitors and raise it later once you have that loyal customer base. All the main forms of service pricing. There is some intentional reiteration of pricing strategies that work for both products and services. Market penetration strategy. Again, here, you set the prices low, and what this does is it grows your market share. And then you increase your rates over time as your customer base grows, as you get that buy-in, that customer loyalty. This can help you grow your customer base quickly. However, there is two big problems with this approach. Some customers initially, especially those that don't know the brand, may associate this lower price with an inferior level of service. Also, covering costs is a lot harder. Price skimming, setting the price high, lowering it over time, also works very well in the service industry. It works especially well if your client thinks that you have something unique to offer by way of your services. So if you were looking to start up your own organizations, this is where your differentiation really comes into play. The stronger your customer value proposition, the greater your differentiation, the more likely it is for customers to see, yes, this is something different. There's competitors, and then there's this that has something I haven't seen before. The pros of price skimming: you have the potential to maximize your profits and grow a more sustainable business. However, you have to be able to justify the price to your customer base somehow, especially in the service industry of consulting. If you go in at a higher price and a client asks you why, you have to bring it to the table and prove it, and prove why you are in fact better than the competition. Premium pricing: charging higher prices because you have something that makes you add additional value. This is similar to price skimming, except that with premium pricing, you set this price and you intend to stay there. On the service side of things, it would be if your organization uses tools or technology that makes that service so much better, and that's what makes that service stand out from its competition. On the product side, does the product offer a warranty or a guarantee, whereas no one else does? That's all justification for setting a premium price and keeping it there. Economy pricing: setting your prices lower than the competition intentionally because your overheads are low, which doesn't happen that often, but it's possible. If an organization uses software to manage things really effectively, or there's been a workaround to outsource a lot of the manpower required to get things done, or if there's a discount with an existing supplier where you're the only one that gets it at that low price. One thing with economy pricing, though, is to watch how it impacts the perception of value of the brand. Again, with each of these strategies, there is an important aspect of quantitative as well as qualitative data to make sure that it's not negatively impacting the perceived value. And then we have our cost plus pricing. Calculating the cost to deliver the services and then adding the margin for a profit. It's straightforward, but it can also cost you money if you wind up setting your prices lower than what the customers are actually willing to pay. Psychological pricing: prices that are based on the psychological impact they have. This pricing is actually quite interesting because you can add it to many of the other pricing strategies as well. You can have your premium pricing or your economy pricing, anything else, and you can simply by adding, for example, something that ends in a 7 or a 9 is actually perceived as more attractive than a round number, like a 0. So it's an additional add-on that blends well with many of the other strategies. Then your competitive pricing works well across the board. Charge according with what the competition charges. However, while competitors can give you a good place of where to start, remember that your business is unique. So just because someone is charging a specific price doesn't necessarily mean you should match or undercut them. It is not the price is right. Bundled pricing, also known as packaged pricing. This strategy involves bundling various services together and charging one price. Bundled services are usually cheaper than if customers were willing to purchase each service individually. This can also be a great way to upsell. And then we have tiered pricing, offering clients the option of choice between different levels of a service or a product. An example, you can offer your basic support package for, let's say, $10, your standard package, which is your basic plus a few little things, $15, and then a deluxe, which is the standard plus a few other little things. The higher the tier, the greater the incremental value to the customer. And the difference in price gives the customer a chance to actually consider what they're willing to spend. It also gives you a really good opportunity to get that buy-in and that willingness to pay from a much broader target market. Questions? Comments? Yes, Rod?
Yeah, I'm curious to know two things. One, for psychological pricing, I've seen that a lot in products or services, but I'm curious if consultants use that sort of like $297, $17.97, whatever, to price. And then secondly, I was curious to know how you go about bundling your own packages. If you could give us examples, if you do.
Packages of my services?
Bundled, yeah. I'm curious if you offer bundles of different services to your clients, yeah.
So to answer your first question first, psychological pricing as far as my rate, no. However, it is something that is very common in product lines and service lines of clients. It's something that they like to add in, just in case. It will give them a little bit of that advantage. And that usually comes in the beginning stages of target market research. So not for myself, but it is quite common across the board otherwise. And as far as bundled pricing, if you will, goes, so under my organization, there's the few different aspects I touched on earlier with the consulting side as well as the coaching side. And what happens in the initial stages, especially with a client for a much larger project, is I give them three options. They can pay my hourly, or I make an assessment of the number of hours it would take, and I cap it at that price. And so their value added is they know that they are going to get this set of work done for this money. I will not go over. I'm also very, very good at doing the research required to really ensure that I'm aware of what it takes. A lot of clients do really like this because they can budget really effectively this way. Clients that prefer sort of more of the hourly rate, they like that because they're not sure of what they need. Or some clients actually start with an hourly to develop that trust, and then under the project request that more services be bundled, which then I do take into consideration, because if a client is blocking off 80 man hours of under my umbrella, I'm not going to charge them for some add-ons that I would otherwise if I'm billing out hourly. And then I suppose the third pricing model that I use is my rate is quite high, my hourly and my project, and there is always an option depending on the project scope and work scope that is somewhat reduced for a percentage of profits depending on project deliverables. I really actually do recommend that everyone that wants to get into consulting looks at this, because what it does is it shows your client you have skin in the game. It shows them that you know your value and that you actually know, I am so good at what I do that I'm going to reduce this for a percentage of profits that you won't get without me helping you. And that confidence kind of marries the two. If someone's hesitant or actually unable to pay what is required, then you say, you know what, this is another option because I believe in this and this is the plan and this will work and this is how we get buy-in. And then it's a win-win because that money wouldn't have been there unless you had someone or a team of someone's coming in to support that. So that's kind of what I do under the umbrella of my company.
Yeah, thank you.
But no .97 at the end. That's
Yeah, I assumed it wouldn't be something that was in consulting as much, like $12.99 deal or whatever.
it is in the sense of a lot of clients like it as an option because it's a very easy thing to say. I mean, the best example of psychological pricing, well, there's lots of good examples, but Costco does it well. I mean, you know that the .98 means something and the .97 means another something. It's been a while since I've been to Costco, but that would be a good example as well. And they like to throw it in because you can do all the research you like, but I mean, their perception of, well, in case all of the data that has been collected and all of the research has been done, maybe we'll just try this one little thing that will help too, right? Depends on the client, I guess. Any other questions? That brings us to Gillette. This example is everywhere. It's in a lot of pricing books. It's all over the internet, and with good reason. There's a blend of pricing strategies done really well by this company. Strategy 1, perceived value pricing. They have the durability, the reliability, the quality, the effectiveness, whatever else it is that they say in their commercials, like really get that buy-in of this is a great product. So they have set the prices of various products, specifically the razors, as per customer demands, and the brand as a whole does have a very clear idea of what this perceived value of their target market is for these products. This in turn helps them do the math to figure out what is that customer base's willingness to pay for said product. They also, while doing this very well, did the penetrative pricing strategy. So what they did here to lure customers away from the competition and to get that buy-in to their brand as a whole is they launched a low-cost variation of their product, the Vector Plus, the budget Gillette, if you will. They use this technique of selling the lower price of this product to make customers aware that their brand as a whole exists, also eventually making them more willing to buy the more expensive products. And worst case scenario, if they always stayed with the Vector line, they would still be perceived as having a higher quality with a lower price, making their overall target market so much bigger because they're pulling from the customer bases of their competitors. And then the bundle pricing. So the whole gambit that they do with the shaving creams plus the gel, the foams, the razor all together. They've been using this technique for a very long time, selling this bundle at a lesser price. However, despite the products actually having been sold at a lower price, it overall increased the company profits since it promotes the purchase of more than one product. This helps Gillette increase its overall sales as well as its overall gross profit margin. Then you have another strategy they did very well, the whole 33% more in this product. It's a trade promotion they do on a whole bunch of their product lines. This consumer promotion increased the increased the demand for the products by creating or increasing awareness about the extra benefits the product has, plus more of said product for the same price. This aligned really well with all the other strategies that they used to capture overall a much higher share of the market. Now, this brings us, I'm going to say, let's come back at 7:30 because I would like us to have enough time to get into the client case so that you guys can all see what the opportunity here is for you to get referrals.
I think we've got a hand up from Bakar. Is that, do you have a question? And you're on mute.
It's okay. We can wait until she's back.
Sounds good.
I'll be back in just one quick moment. I'm just grabbing some water. Can everyone hear me again? It's a very quick 30-second break on my end. Was there a question I missed?
Yeah. I just want to get back into your the way you were talking about pricing. In my experience, being a consultant and now a project manager, what I've realized is that when you have your hourly rate or you have your fixed rate, that whatever you do, one of the biggest challenges I face is the scope creep, because what happens is that the client does not know initially what actually they want. And then you create a scope and your requirements and whatnot. And when you show the first iterative, then they come up with new changes and whatnot. It's not only into strategy, but also in other kinds of projects as well. So one of the challenges, obviously, at my I'm not there yet to have that much experience, but in my 5-6 years of experience, I've noticed that that's the biggest challenge in order to meet the expectations and be like, hey, you're getting what you paid for, and now you're asking for changes that should cost you more, but you're just trying to like, oh shit, he's gonna run away. So just was curious on what your take on that is.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's a conversation that is very common. You know, you do something for someone and they balk at the price and then the project price, and all of a sudden, oh, but can you do this and this and this? And so two things. One, my project plans are very, very detailed. However, two, the first thing actually that goes under the project plan is the revision or termination of the project. So when you sign a contract with anyone, the first thing that I do, and that's worked really well with clients, is you say, this is how you get out of it. This is how I get out of it. This is the point of extra work where we're actually pre-planning to have this conversation. And so you just go into the contract. And if you do want to shoot me an email, I can give you a template of what my contract looks like, because it works really well. It's the, you assume that every client is going to take advantage of what it is that you have to do. And then when they do, that's okay, because you've already planned for that eventuality. And it clearly in your contract says, under this umbrella, I will do these things. However, if the extra work required falls outside of the scope of XYZ, the client and the consultant agree to sit down to renegotiate what that looks like. So you just assume that everyone is going to do that, and you have a baseline contract accordingly. That protects you, but it also allows you to have a little bit more flexibility, where you can have a document where you sit down with the clients and say, of course, I want to help you. The extra work that does fall under the umbrella of the project, that's on me, because that's part of my project plan if you're doing a project price. However, what you're asking here would denote X number of extra man hours, taking away not only from your original desired work scope, but also from my ability to complete what I have promised you on time. So framing it that way and having it in your initial project plan actually allows you to hold your clients accountable and say, under myself or my organization, this is what you said you wanted. This is what's being done to bring this to the table. If you want me to be able to hold to the deadlines, these are the things that are still relevant. Would you like us to renegotiate this contract? And with that, you would then also renegotiate the time frame for everything. That
Great.
actually happens a lot. Like you just plan, it's always going to happen.
Yeah, 100%.
Everyone.
Yeah. You've hit on pretty good points, and I just want to follow up on that one. Was that first, I'm not in a position to create contracts. I've been given contracts and projects, so it's the leadership who does it, and then it's hard to tell them that, hey, this is not, they're asking more, and it will affect the scope, it will affect the time, it will affect the quality, and everything along the lines. And one thing which I've started using now is very similar to what you have as a contract, because you're the owner of the business. So I guess you have more power to negotiate that. When my position, what I've started doing is that when we create a project plan, we create what's in scope and then what's out of the scope. And if they touch upon things which are out of the scope, then we're like, okay, now you're going into that. Like if you're asking for a change which is within the bubble, sure. If you're asking for a change because you've just seen it and now you want 10 more fields or 15 more reports and 16 more workflows, then now we're going into a realm which was uncharted now, and we should chart it again. So I'm actually pretty curious to see what your contract looks like and get some more feedback on you from this. This is 100% of the time on my project that has happened.
Yeah, just shoot me an email and I'll send you a blank one for sure. So it's one of those, you just assume everything is going to go wrong. You get it out of the way. It's the same thing every single time I meet with a new client or affiliate and so forth. Does not matter where the conversation is going or the context of the conversation, I send an MNDA. And it's a very standard, we scratch each other's backs and keep everything confidential. And I always with that, I say, I want to earn your trust. This is my way of doing that, is by letting you know the confidentiality is mutual, no matter where this conversation goes. You just assume it's going to go wrong. And then you do the paperwork to protect yourself and also to hold your clients accountable. Whether you're selling a product or a service, almost all consumers want to feel valued by a company they do business with. That ongoing support and showing your clients you're engaged and you care and you remember is absolutely important. Collaborating with your clients, extremely important, as is asking them for their feedback. There's also something to be said for building a customer community with them. If that's possible for some of your clients to do, if you are looking at being consultants, maybe they could have a Facebook page or a membership platform built in on their website. Well, lastly, continuously offering improvements. By always improving yourself, you're going to eliminate the need for many of your customers to look elsewhere for anything it is that you do, because you will always stay ahead of the curve. Next slide, Jennifer. So I have.
Are you still seeing the screen?
I'm seeing that screen. I did update this slide, so we're going to pretend it says Price Wars. So the idea behind Price Wars is that they're becoming more and more common because managers are starting to see pricing or perceive pricing as something that can be changed very quickly and that it's reversible. Engaging in a price war, although it is a competitive strategy and it's mainly used to capture a market share, it is and can be highly detrimental to the long-term image of your brand. Some companies may choose to sell a product or service at a loss simply because they want to actually outlast their competition. Next slide. Ah, there we go. Next slide. Are there any questions we have before we get into the case part of this? I'm going to take the silence as a no. Next slide, please. All right. So my clients, or potentially our clients, if you want to take on this assignment. The brand is Ilola. They are leading innovative efforts to shift the wellness industry into a luxury wellness culture and lifestyle. The case study that you'll have attached will have a link to their website as well as all the details there. Basically, the brand behind Ilola is the idea that unparalleled quality of wellness products is something that can be found across their line. They say that their brand offers strength in the face of uncertainty. It's a company whose products help you find more moments in your day. A brand with unwavering assurance on the unparalleled blend and quality of ingredients that offer you strength to move through those moments. So they have 3 main individual products that are available for sale on their website. That's tea, wellness shots, and essential oils. And I do absolutely highly recommend that you look at the website. I don't do an adequate job of selling this brand over the phone. So links to all those pages and everything will be provided. Essentially, Ilola has defined its primary target markets as the Generation X and millennial professionals with higher purchasing power. They're currently looking at significant social media marketing focus as it aligns with these target markets. The current situation, and if you possibly want to click on the next slide, I don't know because our slides are different. Ah, perfect. The current situation. So they've recently launched the website for these 3 individual product offerings. The brand story speaks to the company's dedication to its target markets. Specifically, individuals whose lifestyles align themselves with the need for quality nutrition in the blends of the products offered. The target markets overall are seen as people within these categories who view their wellness routines as part of who they are and demonstrate this by prioritizing what it is that they do to nourish their bodies. So what this client wants us to think about, and for you to, if you like, answer the questions from a lens of an external consultant who is looking to provide them recommendations and make suggestions about how they would best move effectively forward to ensure that buy-in of their target markets. So the questions they would have, and this will all be provided to you, are as follows. Do you think the target market's willingness to pay is impacted by the current price points? How so? What steps would you recommend this client takes to more effectively reach its desired consumer groups? Speak to the price elasticity of demand as it pertains to Ilola and make recommendations that demonstrate applicable pricing strategies, or I highly recommend blends thereof. Upon reviewing the website, how do you see Ilola's positioning in the market? Are there any changes you would make? If so, why? Does the current pricing of these 3 individual products lend itself to certain social media marketing and advertising strategies? If so, what are they? Define a pricing model or blend of models that suits its long-term goal of shifting the wellness industry into a luxury wellness culture. This may be different than suggesting for what they would do to position themselves in the industry. Lastly, a bonus question, if you will. is there anything outside of the box that you would recommend that this company does to reach their target markets? Which, next slide. So the deadline for this would be to submit your answers to my email for the 2nd of March. I will then review all of your submissions with the client. And as mentioned, you would, if your answers show potential in the consulting world, you would receive a reference from myself as well as each of these 2 clients as to how your solutions help them move past the problem. Do we have any questions about the case or anything so far? Which, Jennifer, I can't actually see if there are questions, so if you would let me know, or if we're good to go.
Yeah, Rod just raised his hand now.
Yeah,
Rod, go
just
ahead,
a logistical question. The information, Jennifer or yourself, is it being emailed to us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right after this workshop, I will send an email with the case brief that Mona has prepared for us and Mona's email address, so that you can send your information to Mona. And Mona is also offering the free 30-minute one-on-one coaching session, which can also be used for any questions regarding the case. Is that right, Mona?
Yeah. And if you wanted to use it for that, I could always help you brainstorm at that time. However, the 30 minutes is really up to you. If you had any other questions.
Yeah, so questions regarding perhaps career guidance or personal consulting, that kind of thing.
Yep. Or if there's resources that I might have that I could share with you that would sort of help you specifically. A lot of the information we have covered is very surface level, only because I am aware at how many different areas of interest or strengths are coming to the table. So it would give me a chance to actually individually say, you know, this is something I could have that may help you. Any other questions?
No hands so far.
Okay. So next slide, please. Next slide.
This is the last of our slides, yeah.
Yes. That's the last. Oh, that's the last one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll just read my second back screen here. The price of anything is the amount of life that you exchange for it. I do hope that you found this workshop, despite this massive technical glitch, to be interesting and of value to you and your professional lives as you move forward. It has been absolutely a pleasure to be here and to spend time with you this evening, and I really appreciate the opportunity provided to me by UBC, and I thank you very much, Jennifer, for everything you've done and helping me organize and completely taking over the presentation as a whole in this last few minutes here. And yeah, just a reminder, reach out if you have any questions or if you would like a little bit more of a conversation once you've had a chance to review the client's website. And I'd be absolutely happy to help answer those at that time. And that's that wraps everything up.
And thank you very much, Mona, for organizing this wonderful workshop and for offering all of the resources and the coaching session and the client case, and just giving the students, I think, a much more comprehensive look at all the different pricing strategies, and also the opportunity to work on a real client case and get real referrals, which was just, yeah, it's great value. Yeah, we're all very thankful to you. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm excited to see what you come up with, for sure, and I'm always available, so.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions before we wrap things up for the evening?
I'm not seeing any hands, but
I have a question.
Awesome.
What does the referral look like? Is this a LinkedIn referral or rather a reference?
So it would be a formal written reference by myself, like on my company letterhead, speaking to what you're bringing to the table as far as consulting wise, as well as the same, like a written letter reference from each of the clients if they also feel it's added value. So you would have, if you answer the questions extraordinarily well, and I can always help sort of direct you a little bit down a path where you'd have a better chance of doing so, then not only would I do it, each of them would do it as well. So then you would have 3 references that say, you know, you came up with something that's really helped us as a client moving forward.
So
Which
it's a binary. It's like 0 or 3, or is it 1
No,
or 3 or 0?
it's up to 3.
Up to 3. Okay.
Yep. So if I see it has great potential and the clients say, well, we don't really want to go in that direction, I would still be giving that reference. Is that the whole question? I'm assuming that the silence means yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Rod has himself unmuted. Did you want to say something? No. Okay. All right.
Okay. Perfect. Well, if anyone thinks of anything, shoot me an email.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight and for participating, and look for an email coming from sauderconsultinggroup@gmail.com, and we will be in touch. Feel free to send an email with any questions, concerns, comments, anything like that. We are always open and welcome your feedback.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.